November 10th, 1444. The Battle of Varna. A gale-force wind tears across the Black Sea coast, ripping the Crusader flags from their poles before the battle even begins. Down in the mud, a severely outnumbered Christian army is fighting for its life against the might of Sultan Murad II and the Ottoman Empire. Yet, miraculously, they are winning. For hours, brilliant heavy cavalry tactics have shattered the Ottoman flanks. The mastermind behind this strategy, a scarred veteran commander, has strictly ordered the 20-year-old King of Hungary and Poland to hold his position. Victory is agonizingly close, but glory is a poison. Eager to claim the killing blow for himself, young King Vladislas completely ignores his general's orders. He launches a reckless, suicidal cavalry charge directly into the Sultan's elite guards, the Janissaries. The king is killed instantly. An Ottoman mercenary severs his head and hoists it high on a Turkish pike. Seeing their king dead, the entire Crusader army shatters in sheer terror. The veteran commander watches his life's work dissolve into a massacre. He has to slash his way out through a carpet of corpses, barely escaping with his life. He retreats into the Wallachian wilderness, a fugitive in a doomed continent. That commander was John Hunyadi. 12 years later, the Sultan didn't come to negotiate, he came to erase a kingdom. Mehmet the Conqueror, the man who liquidated the last remnants of the Roman Empire at Constantinople, now stands before the key to Hungary. He has 22 of the largest bronze cannons ever forged, capable of turning limestone walls into dust. Inside Belgrade, the professional knights are gone. The nobility has fled. John Hunyadi looks out at an army of dirt-covered peasants, students and friars. They are outnumbered 20-1. The rest of the world has already written their obituaries. Every day for 5 centuries, a bell has tolled at noon in cities from Vienna to Rome. Most people hear it and think of lunch. They are wrong. That sound is a 500-year-old war cry. It is the echo of the day a bastard mercenary from the mountains of Transylvania stood in the breach and broke the world's most powerful empire. John Hunyadi wasn't born a king. He wasn't even born into high nobility. Yet he would rise to become the regent of a crumbling kingdom, the absolute shield of Christendom, and a man so terrifying on the battlefield that even the greatest Ottoman sultans whispered his name in fear. His military career rewrote the rules of engagement. He took peasant militias and broken mercenaries and turned them into a machine that broke the conqueror of Constantinople. History began with a scandal. Rumors claimed John Hunyadi wasn't the son of the minor knight who raised him, but the secret bastard of the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund. The story goes that a raven stole the emperor's golden signet ring from John's mother, and the boy tracked the bird through the wilderness to kill it and reclaim his blood right. Royal blood or not, John's education was forged in the mud. He didn't just study the Ottoman war machine, he lived inside it. He spent his youth grooming horses for an Ottoman pasha, learning the fluid, lethal language of the Akinji raiders. He moved through Europe like a ghost, soaking up every method of killing he could find. In Italy, he mastered the steel wall of heavy cavalry. In Bohemia, he saw the Wagenburg, armored wagons used as mobile fortresses that could shred a horse charge in seconds. He was building a new philosophy of war. He was the hammer, and he was looking for an anvil. But long before the tragedy of Varna, the legend of the Hammer of the Turks began in the shadows of a dark Transylvanian forest. By 1441, the Kingdom of Hungary had torn itself apart in a bitter civil war. Smelling blood, Ottoman raiders poured over the southern borders, devastating the countryside and taking thousands of Christian slaves. For his loyalty to the new King Vladislas, Hunyadi was appointed voivode, military governor of Transylvania. He was tasked with an impossible job, defending a collapsing, underfunded frontier. Hunyadi struck immediately. He ambushed an Ottoman raiding force led by Ishak Beg, relying on the heavy Italian cavalry tactics he had mastered to crush the lightly armored Ottoman horsemen. It was a massive moral victory, proving the invincible Ottomans could be broken. But Sultan Murad II was furious. He ordered a massive retaliation. In early 1442, an Ottoman commander named Mezid Beg invaded Transylvania with 16,000 men. In their first skirmish at Santimbru, Hunyadi was caught off guard. The Transylvanian lines broke, and the local bishop was slaughtered on the field. It was a bitter defeat. But Hunyadi was a master of psychological warfare. Hunyadi rallied his broken forces. He knew Mezid Beg had given his men strict orders: kill Hunyadi at all costs. The Ottomans had been given detailed descriptions of his distinctive armor. So, Hunyadi made a deadly switch. A loyal soldier named Simeon Kamonyai volunteered to wear the voivode's armor. When the armies clashed again at the Iron Gate of Transylvania, the Ottomans swarmed Kamonyai. They cut him down, cheering in absolute triumph, believing they had slain the great Hunyadi. As they celebrated, the real Hunyadi, wearing plain armor, unleashed a devastating flank attack. The shock was absolute. The Ottomans broke and ran. Hunyadi annihilated them, sending a gruesome message to the king in Buda. A wagon piled high with severed heads, topped by the impaled heads of Mezid Beg and his sons. Enraged beyond measure, Sultan Murad II dispatched a cataclysmic force. In September 1442, Shihabuddin Pasha, the Governor-General of Rumelia, marched into Wallachia with an army estimated by terrified contemporaries at 80,000 men. The Pasha was so arrogant, he boasted that the mere sight of his turban would make his enemies flee for hundreds of miles. Hunyadi had only 15,000 men. But he had the Wagenburg. Shadowing the massive Ottoman horde, Hunyadi waited for the perfect moment. When Shihabuddin ordered his army to cross the narrow upper valley of the Yalomitsa River, Hunyadi struck. He deployed heavily armed war wagons as a mobile fortress, packing them with infantry and small-caliber cannons. When the Ottoman cavalry charged, they slammed into a literal wall of wood and lead. As the Ottoman ranks descended into chaos in the narrow valley, Hunyadi unleashed his heavy cavalry, crushing the enemy. It was an absolute slaughter. Shihabuddin Pasha fled in disgrace, leaving behind thousands of dead, 5,000 camels, and half of the provincial Ottoman leadership. Overnight, John Hunyadi became an international superstar. The hammer of the Turks had arrived. Hunyadi didn't believe in defense. He believed in the throat punch. In 1443, he launched the Long Campaign. In a daring, unprecedented move, he marched a crusader army deep into Ottoman territory during the freezing winter, a time when medieval armies typically rested. He forced his way through the mountains, capturing the cities of Niš and Sofia. By December, the weather turned bitter. At the Zlatitsa Pass, the crusaders fought in deep snow, cutting down trees to clear a path, while under heavy Ottoman arrow fire. Forced to retreat due to the sheer cold, Hunyadi proved his lethal cunning one more time. As the Ottomans enthusiastically pursued the retreating Christians, Hunyadi sprang a trap at Kunovica on January 2, 1444. The ambush decimated the Ottoman vanguard and captured Mahmud Beg, the Sultan's own brother-in-law. The campaign forced Sultan Murad to the negotiating table, offering a 10-year peace treaty, the Peace of Szeged, returning occupied territories to Serbia. But peace is fragile when ambitious men seek eternal glory. Driven by the Pope's legate, Cardinal Cesarini, the 20-year-old King Vladislas was convinced to break the ink-fresh peace treaty. They believed the Ottomans were weak, and a Western fleet was supposedly blocking the Sultan from returning to Europe. They were dead wrong. The Sultan crossed the straits with his entire army, leading directly to the slaughter at Varna. With King Vladislas dead at Varna, Hungary plunged back into chaos. To prevent total anarchy, the nobles elected Hunyadi as the Lord Governor, the regent of the entire kingdom. He had supreme power, but Hunyadi was obsessed with finishing the war. In 1448, he launched another massive invasion, marching 24,000 men into the Balkans. He met the Ottomans at the Second Battle of Kosovo-Polje. For 3 grueling days and 2 nights, the armies slaughtered each other. Hunyadi unleashed his war wagons and heavy firearms, but the Ottoman light cavalry seemed endless. On the second night, Hunyadi launched a desperate midnight assault directly at the Sultan's camp, but the elite Janissaries repelled them. On the third morning, outflanked and betrayed by the Serbian despot George Branković, who refused to help and fed intelligence to the Ottomans, the Crusader lines collapsed. Hunyadi's army was annihilated. While fleeing, Hunyadi was captured by Branković and thrown into a dungeon in Semendria. He was forced to ransom himself and leave his own son, Ladislaus, as a hostage. To the rest of the world, it seemed the White Night was finally broken. In 1453, the world shuddered. Mehmet II, a brilliant and ruthless young sultan, conquered Constantinople, ending the Roman Empire once and for all. The conqueror now turned his terrifying gaze toward the heart of Europe. In the summer of 1456, Mehmet marched an army toward Belgrade, the absolute key to Hungary. He brought 300 cannons, including 22 massive siege guns. If Belgrade fell, the road to Vienna and beyond was wide open. The Hungarian nobility, paralyzed by fear and petty politics, largely abandoned Hunyadi. Left entirely to his own devices, the aging commander spent his own vast fortune to garrison the fortress, leaving his brother-in-law, Michael Szilágyi, to hold the walls with just 5,000 to 7,000 men. Hunyadi desperately needed an army. What he got was a miracle. A 70-year-old Franciscan friar named John of Capistrano swept through the countryside, preaching a desperate crusade. He didn't raise knights, he raised farmers, students, and hermits. Armed with nothing but scythes, pitchforks, clubs, and slings, tens of thousands of peasants marched to follow Hunyadi into the jaws of hell. On July 4th, Mehmed's artillery began to pound Belgrade into dust. To completely strangle the city, the Sultan chained 200 war galleys across the Danube River, cutting off all supplies. Hunyadi arrived upriver. He knew that if he didn't break that naval blockade, Belgrade would starve. On July 14th, Hunyadi launched a ferocious naval assault. Using 40 vessels from the city and a fleet of his own, the Hungarian ships slammed into the Sultan's blockade. In a brutal 5-hour battle of ramming and boarding, they shattered the Ottoman fleet. Sinking 3 massive galleys and capturing 24 more, Hunyadi broke the blockade and sailed into the burning city with food and fresh troops. But Mehmet II was just getting started. On July 21st, as the sun set, Mehmed ordered an all-out assault. The besieging army flooded through the breached walls, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat in the city streets. As the Ottomans pushed toward the upper citadel, Hunyadi sprang a horrific trap. He ordered his men to hurl tarred wood, sulfur, and burning pitch down into the moat and the streets. A literal wall of fire erupted, cutting the Janissaries off from their reinforcements. Trapped in the inferno, the elite Ottoman vanguard was massacred by the defenders. In the chaos of the assault, an Ottoman soldier reached the top of the ramparts, preparing to plant the Sultan's flag. But a Hungarian soldier named Titus Dugovic rushed him. Grappling the flag-bearer, Dugovic threw himself off the high tower, dragging the enemy and the flag down to their deaths in the trench below. By morning, the attack was repulsed. Hunyadi strictly ordered his men to stay behind the walls. But the peasant crusaders, gripped by religious fervor, crept out of the rubble to taunt the Ottoman lines. What started as a minor skirmish exploded into a full-scale, spontaneous charge. Ignoring all military discipline, Friar Capistrano cried out, "The Lord who made the beginning will take care of the finish," and led thousands of peasants directly at the Ottoman artillery camp. Seeing the madness, Hunyadi realized he had no choice. He ordered a desperate cavalry charge out of the fortress to capture the Ottoman cannons. The Christian counter-offensive smashed into the Ottoman camp. Sultan Mehmed II himself refused to flee, rushing into the fray and fighting hand-to-hand to prevent a total collapse. The conqueror killed several men before being severely wounded in the thigh, forcing his own guards to drag him from the battlefield. Unable to recapture their artillery, the Ottoman War Council admitted defeat. Under the cover of darkness, the undefeated Ottoman army broke and fled, abandoning their camp, their immense loot, and their pride. John Hunyadi, against all odds of physics and reason, had broken the conqueror. The victory at Belgrade sent shockwaves of jubilation across Europe. But the triumph carried a cruel price. The tens of thousands of decaying corpses unleashed a devastating outbreak of the plague in the Crusader camp. Just 3 weeks after saving the continent, on August 11, 1456, the White Knight, John Hunyadi, succumbed to the disease. He died unconquered. When the news of Hunyadi's death reached Sultan Mehmed, the Ottoman ruler supposedly bowed his head in grief, stating that the world had never seen such a man. Hunyadi had bought Europe 70 years of breathing room. His son, Matthias Corvinus, would rise to become one of the greatest kings in Hungarian history, building the legendary Black Army to carry on his father's fight. When Pope Calixtus III first heard that the siege was underway, he ordered church bells across Europe to ring at noon to call believers to pray for the defenders of Belgrade. But because news of the miraculous victory arrived before the Pope's order in many places, the ringing of the midday bell was instantly transformed into a celebration of triumph. And the Pope never withdrew the order. To this day, every time you hear a Catholic or old Protestant church bell toll at noon, it is not merely striking the hour. It is a 500-year-old echo, a daily reminder of a peasant army, a fiery moat, and a relentless mercenary-turned-statesman who stood at the gates of hell and held the line. The echoes of that decision shaped the next 500 years of history. If you enjoy immersive history, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more forgotten chapters of our past. Who do you think was the greatest tactical mind of the 15th century? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, keep exploring the past.